All right, so we're tackling import-export specialist interviews today, specifically in the electronic and telecommunications equipment industry. And luckily, we've got RoleCatcher's resources to help us prep. Career guides, interview guides, even some cool AI tools.
It's like getting ready for a big game, you know?
Yeah.
We're here to help you not just answer those interview questions, but really impress.
First things first, though, what does an import-export specialist even do in this industry? I mean, it can't just be about making sure boxes end up on the right continent.
Oh, it's way more than that. Imagine like conducting a global orchestra, but instead of instruments, you're harmonizing all the smartphones and network equipment, all those gadgets we can't live without, making sure they move across borders smoothly, legally, efficiently, on schedule.
RoleCatcher Guide keeps mentioning deep knowledge, though. So it sounds like it's not just about logistics. It's about being like the legal and regulatory expert.
Right on. You're navigating a really complex web. International trade regulations, customs procedures, compliance standards. You're making sure everything's above board and running smoothly in a world that's constantly changing, too.
Okay, let's get to the interview itself. RoleCatcher gave us 10 common questions, and we're going to break them down. This first one really stood out to me. How do you stay up to date with the constantly changing global trade regulations?
Ah, yes, that's a classic. Here's the thing. Anyone can say they keep up with changes, but interviewers want specifics. This is your chance to showcase that you're not just aware, but actively engaged. Name drop those industry publications, associations, maybe even government agencies you follow. Show them you're really plugged into the pulse of the industry.
So instead of just, I read industry news, you could say, I follow the World Trade Organization, or I subscribe to the Journal of International Commerce and Economics.
Exactly, and don't forget about any regional trade agreements, especially ones specific to electronics. If the company operates in Europe, for example, mention EU regulations on electronic waste, or OHS compliance.
Okay, so it's all about proving you're proactive about knowledge.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at another question, one that can really trip people up. Tell me about a time you had to negotiate with a difficult supplier or a client.
This is where you really get to shine. Show off those diplomacy skills, your problem-solving abilities, how you handle pressure. Remember, interviewers love specifics, not vague statements. So think of the specific situation. Maybe when timelines were tight, or budgets were squeezed, or a shipment hit a major snag.
Well, what if, like, a key component for a smartphone was delayed, and you had to negotiate with the supplier to speed up production, but without sacrificing quality?
Perfect example. Walk the interviewer through the steps you took, how you communicated, the compromises you made, and ultimately the positive outcome you achieved.
Show them you can turn chaos into a win-win. Okay, this next question really makes you think. How do you manage risk in this line of work? I mean, with electronics, we're talking high-value, delicate equipment.
Right, you are. And the potential risks. They're everywhere. Damage in transit, theft, delays, even fluctuating currency exchange rates.
So how do you answer this without making it sound like a disaster movie?
Focus on your proactive risk mitigation strategies. Don't just say insurance. Mention specific types that are relevant to electronics and telecommunications, like cargo insurance for damage during shipping, product liability insurance in case of defects, maybe even political risk insurance if you're dealing with a volatile region.
That level of detail really shows you understand the industry. Okay, shifting gears a bit. RoleCatcher's Career Guide really emphasizes Incoterms. Can you explain why those are so important for an import-export specialist?
Incoterms are like the international language of trade. They lay out the responsibilities between buyers and sellers. Who handles shipping, insurance, customs, all those critical details. Knowing them inside and out prevents confusion, costly mistakes, and potential disputes.
So it's like a universal rulebook everyone agrees on. Makes global transactions so much smoother.
Precisely. For example, let's say your company is importing parts from China. You could mention using the CIF Incoterm. That's cost, insurance, and freight, which means the supplier is responsible for the costs and insurance until the goods reach your port. It clarifies responsibility and minimizes risk.
All right, before we move on to more questions, let's talk about how RoleCatcher's AI can give you a leg up in your prep. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Their AI can analyze job descriptions and then tailor your CV and cover letter to match those specific keywords and skills that recruiters are looking for.
So it's like having a personal assistant. Optimize your application. Help you stand out.
Exactly. It's not just about using the right words, it's about using them in the right way to really grab the recruiter's attention. Their AI can even spot gaps in your experience. based on the job description, and then suggest additional skills or certifications that you could highlight to boost your application.
That's pretty amazing. And it's not just for CVs and cover letters, right? They've got those AI-powered interview practice tools, too.
You bet. We'll dive into those more later. But it's like having a virtual coach, analyzing your answers, providing feedback on your clarity, your conciseness, even your tone of voice.
Like a secret weapon to fine-tune your delivery and build that confidence. Okay, let's get back to those interview questions.
Welcome back. We're diving into more of those import-export interview questions, focusing on how to really show off your expertise in electronics and telecommunications.
All right, hit me with them. This next one seems pretty straightforward. Can you explain your experience with import-export regulations and compliance? But I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
Oh, definitely. It's not enough to just say you're familiar with the rules. You got to demonstrate you understand how they apply, specifically to this industry. Think about electronics, export controls on sensitive technologies, compliance with safety standards, like CE marking for Europe, even tariffs, which are constantly changing.
So instead of just listing regulations, could you walk them through a specific example of how you ensured compliance?
Exactly. Maybe you had to get an export license. For some telecommunications equipment, going to a country with strict import rules, describe the steps, the challenges, how you made sure everything was legal.
So it's not just knowing the rules, it's showing you've actually applied them. Okay, here's one that probably needs both technical knowledge and soft skills. Can you give an example of a time you had to resolve a customs-related issue?
Yes, the dreaded customs delay. Stressful for sure. But it's also a great chance to showcase your problem-solving skills and how you stay calm under pressure. Think back to a time a shipment was held up, maybe because of a paperwork problem, or a product was misclassified.
I bet that happens more than we think, especially with electronic shipments.
It definitely can. But instead of focusing on the frustration, walk the interviewer through your process. How did you find the root cause? What steps did you take? Did you contact customs officials or a freight forwarder? And most importantly, how did you finally resolve it and get that shipment moving again?
Turning a crisis into a success story. Now let's shift to logistics. This question really tests that. Can you explain how you ensure that shipments are delivered on time and within budget?
Here's where you show off your mastery of the supply chain. From start to finish, don't just list tasks, really paint a picture of your process. How do you pick reliable freight forwarders? What systems do you use to track shipments? How do you communicate with suppliers and clients to keep everyone in the loop?
Maybe even mention using project management tools to stay organized.
Great point. And don't forget about budget management. Highlight your experience negotiating shipping rates, optimizing routes, finding creative ways to save money without compromising speed or reliability.
It's not just moving boxes, it's conducting the whole logistical symphony.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide also talks about certifications, like Certified Export Specialist, CES, or Certified Customs Specialist, CCS. Do those really make a difference in getting a job?
Absolutely. They show potential employers that you're committed to your career and that you have specialized knowledge. It's a great way to stand out, especially in a competitive market.
So even if a job description doesn't require it, having one could give you an edge.
For sure. It shows you're willing to go above and beyond. Now let's look at a question about trade agreements. Can you discuss your experience with international trade agreements?
This one sounds a bit intimidating. It's not just about knowing the rules, it's understanding the whole landscape of global trade.
Right. They want to know if you understand how trade policies affect your work. So brush up on key agreements, like the WTO rules, and any regional agreements that are relevant. If they export to the EU, for instance, you should know about the EU-South Korea Free Trade Agreement and how it impacts tariffs on electronics.
So it's about seeing the big picture, not just the day-to-day tasks. Okay, let's go back to practical experience. Can you give an example of a time you had to negotiate with the supplier or client?
This question is a classic. It shows off your negotiation skills, but also how you build relationships and find solutions that work for everyone. Think of a time there was a conflict. Maybe a supplier raised their prices, or a client wanted to change a shipment at the last minute.
Sounds like a real test.
Oh, it can be. But that's why it's such a good learning experience. Walk them through your approach. How did you communicate? What strategies did you use? And how did you reach a resolution? That was good for both sides.
Showing you can handle those bumps in the road, diplomatically and professionally.
Yeah.
All right, before we wrap up this part, let's talk more about RoleCatcher's AI tools and how they can help you perfect your interview skills.
Imagine practicing your answers and getting feedback from an AI coach.
This is super valuable.
It is. RoleCatcher's AI analyzes your responses, gives you insights on your clarity, conciseness, even your tone of voice. It helps you pinpoint areas to improve and build that confidence. We'll explore these tools in more detail next time. But for now, think about this.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive. We've gone over a lot. What it means to be an import-export specialist. How to handle those tricky interview questions. Now let's really focus on RoleCatcher's AI and how it can help you land that job.
It's like taking your prep to the next level. We talked about their AI analyzing your CV and cover letter, but the interview practice tool is really something else. It's like having a personal coach right there with you.
We touched on it before, but can you walk us through how it works? I can imagine myself practicing those questions, but what kind of feedback does the AI actually give?
It's super detailed. Let's say you answer the question about resolving a customs issue. The AI looks at your whole response, not just what you said, but how you said it. Was it clear? Did you get to the point? Did your tone of voice sound confident and professional?
It's amazing what AI can pick up on these days.
I know, right? And it doesn't just point out what you did wrong. It actually gives you suggestions, even examples of how to rephrase your answers, to make them stronger and more persuasive.
So it's like a guide to better communication.
Exactly. And think about how much more confident you'll feel knowing you're communicating effectively. You'll walk into that interview feeling so much more prepared.
That feeling of being ready can make all the difference. Now, before we wrap up, I want to mention something RoleCatcher's career guide pointed out, asking insightful questions during the interview.
Oh, that's huge. It's easy to get caught up in answering their questions. But don't forget, it's a two-way street. It's your chance to see if the company is a good fit for you too.
So what kind of questions should we be asking?
Don't be afraid to go deeper. Ask about their global operations, their plans for growth in electronics and telecommunications, maybe even their sustainability practices, or their commitment to employee development.
So it's about showing you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for the right career.
Right. Asking thoughtful questions shows you're curious, engaged, and thinking long-term. It makes a great impression, shows them you're serious.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, you're now equipped with the knowledge, the strategies, and even some AI-powered tools to help you ace that import-export interview.
Remember, preparation is important, but passion is what sets you apart. Let your enthusiasm for this industry shine through, both in your answers and the questions you ask.
And as you move forward, remember this industry is always changing. Embrace the challenge. Never stop learning. And good luck in that interview. We're excited to see where your global career takes you.